I'm home, guys. Turns out I could come home early today after all. I also brought back some of your favorite cake, Sherry. Why are you guys ignoring me all the time? Who the hell do you think you are, ignoring the person who provides everything you need to survive? My name is Allison Kobayashi, and I'm a 30-year-old housewife. At the time of this particular story, I was living together with my husband, Gideon, and my daughter, Sherry, who was in the first grade. Our family was very close, and we were happy every day. We went on trips together on weekends, and we always had dinner together, whether it was at home or somewhere outside on special occasions. Tragically, though, it didn't take long for our happy family to be destroyed. It seemingly all happened in the blink of an eye. One day, Sherry came home from school and suddenly shot herself in her room. This was definitely not like her, because every day she would normally exclaim, "I'm home," in that lustrous, energetic voice of hers, and we'd have a small snack together. But the fact that she went into her room without even saying anything at all made me suspect something must be wrong. I rushed to my daughter's room, but when I attempted to open the door, I discovered she'd locked it. My suspicions were pretty much confirmed by then, and convinced she needed someone to talk to, I knocked on the door and called out her name. "Sherry, are you in there, sweetheart? What's going on? Did something happen at school?" I asked her, and she didn't respond, but I could hear her crying in her room. I came to believe this was the result of some kind of trouble at school. I kept on knocking on her door, calling to her as gently and compassionately as I could, hoping to get some kind of response. I know it sounds like I'm being annoyingly persistent, but you can't blame a mother worrying about her own daughter, who could be crying alone in her room. A few minutes later, she came out of her room and she really was crying, and boy, oh boy, was she crying a lot. Her cheeks were completely drenched and warm to the touch, and snot was running out of her nose onto her lips. I feared the worst, and I almost started to cry myself, but I forced myself to keep my cool, hugged her, and listened to her story as she began to speak. Then, Sherry made a shocking statement. "Daddy was hugging a friend of yours, Mommy, in the parking lot of the big shop with all the food. Many people could see them. I saw them, but I don't know if they saw me." I was so surprised that I asked her for some more details. "My friend Tommy's mom picked me up from school today. Don't worry, I told her thank you many times, Mommy. And on the way home, we went past the big shop with all the vegetables and big boxes outside. I loved looking at all the colors, and I looked out the window of the car to look at the vegetables, and I saw Daddy and your friend together, Mommy. I wanted to open the window and say hello to them, but then they started hugging." She started to bawl again. Her sadness was so genuine and so pure that it twisted and wrenched my heart. "Did Tommy's mommy see them too?" "No, I don't think she saw them. I was about to cry as soon as I knew it was Daddy, but I held it in, Mommy." "Way to go, Sherry. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so proud of you, and I'm very sorry you feel so sad." So, according to my daughter's testimony, Gideon was having an affair with one of my friends from Sherry's school. Since I was completely convinced our family was close and happy, I never dreamed he would ever have an affair, and I felt nothing but shame and apology that Sherry had seen the affair with her own eyes. I couldn't do anything but hug her. All I could do in that moment was to hug her, try my best to console her, apologize to her again and again and again. Eventually, I started to cry too. After a short while, Sherry calmed down, and I was thinking about starting to cook dinner when I received a message from Gideon. The message said he was going to come home late. I had one look at my phone and froze dead still. Sherry noticed and called out to me. "Mommy, what's wrong?" "Oh, nothing, honey. Daddy's just going to be home late. Daddy's a big liar. I loved you so much, Daddy. Now I hate you so much. You hurt Mommy, and you made me very sad. I hate you." Sherry was utterly and completely furious, but the expression on her face was pure sadness. How about we play a little game, sweetie? Let's play secret game. We're a team against Daddy, okay? Here are the rules. First, we don't tell Daddy about him hugging another woman. And second, Mommy will go do some detective work, and you won't worry about anything. Do you think we can win the game, darling? I know that telling a child not to worry about anything isn't exactly the most ideal thing to do, but what else could I say, especially in that situation? That's all I could think of that was reassuring. We slept in the same bed that night, hugging each other and comforting each other. Gideon seemed to have come home later on. He didn't call out to us, nor did he say anything to us at all. He apparently went to work early the next day, because we never saw each other that morning. The next morning, I saw a now more recovered Sherry off to school, and then I ran to a trusted detective agency. I asked them to investigate a love affair against my husband, and they told me it would take about a month before they could give me any substantial results. If there was evidence that confirmed Gideon was having an affair, they promised to contact me before they whipped up the report. Thereafter, some time passed before I heard from them again. Not so long as an entire month, but it was certainly more than 2 weeks. Being together with my husband for that long, knowing that he was actively being unfaithful to his family, was nothing but agony. It was like running a marathon, knowing that I was heading straight into a thunderstorm. And when they would contact me, claiming they now had firm evidence to confirm a suspected affair, and I, in turn, would have to face up to whom he was having an affair with, I despised the notion that someone else would find about the affair because my husband was with one of my friends from Sherry's school. Even I hated having to know who the woman was, and the fact that it was Gideon who was persuading her to go out with him made me absolutely sick. I don't think I ever felt this uncomfortable and disgusted towards another human being. Sherry and I were so disgusted with Gideon that we played the secret game like true professionals. We did our best not to talk to him at all. Sherry actually stopped approaching her father altogether. Is she going through a bit of a rebellious period lately? It's a bit early, isn't it? Gideon never had a clue in the world and kept on saying carefree things like that. I was just so sick and tired of his existence. One day, while leading such a stressful life, I was contacted by the detective agency. I was both happy and scared to find out all the bad things my husband had done. The staff at the detective agency reminded me that this was only a draft, an interim, and that it wasn't to be taken too seriously just yet. I received some photographs in my email. By that point, I knew for sure that he really was cheating on me. And the photographs were all taken at the same supermarket where Sherry had first caught sight of them being unfaithful. I couldn't understand why they were hugging each other in the supermarket so often. I couldn't help but feel sick to my stomach once again. It felt worse than my morning sickness, which was already quite the doozy. And when I saw the woman in the photographs, I gawked at the screen, stunned and speechless. The woman, whom he was having an affair with, was none other than my best friend, Anna. Anna often came over to our house, and Sherry liked her very much, so much so that she considered her an aunt. Whenever she came over, Sherry ran up to her and asked her to play, and then they would have lots of fun together. Sherry's favorite thing to do with her Auntie Anna was going to theme parks together. Of all the women that could have been having the affair with my husband, she was literally the last person I was expecting. I just couldn't believe what I saw, and the fact that Sherry was the first to see the crime itself. Oh, Sherry darling, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Needless to say, I was downright furious with Gideon. I was able to find out about the current status of the affair through the interim report that the detective agency, but they informed me that it would take a little more time to prepare a report eligible for the court. Therefore, I didn't question Gideon about the affair, and I was left with no other choice but to live with him as if nothing was happening. I could not forgive my husband for cheating on me, but I thought that it was not good for me to be a single parent for Sherry's sake. However, She was asking me questions about her father's affair, and as days went by, it became increasingly difficult to keep everything from her. So eventually, I decided to tell her. She may still be in the first grade, but she was the one who first had a clear understanding of what was going on. She first uncovered the affair after all. I hate Daddy for cheating on you, Mommy. He hurt you, and he hurt me too. I hate him. I want to be with you, Mommy. Please don't make me stay with Daddy. As she said that, she hugged me very tightly. I hugged her back tightly too. I could no longer live with the husband who betrayed us, and we can no longer live together as a family. Even if I stay at home like this, it won't be good for our future as a married couple, nor will have a positive impact on Sherry's future. So right then, I set my mind on getting a divorce. From that day, it would take about another month before the report from the detective agency arrived, but Sherry and I actively began to avoid any form of contact with Gideon. We didn't have any conversations with him. We didn't invite him out on any family trips on the weekends, and we never asked how his days at work were. Both of us began to see Gideon as something that wasn't human, more like an abomination that was going to be terminated very soon. I made an interesting new discovery that night, that someone you loved once upon a time can appear as something completely aberrant when you really can't accept their existence anymore. Gideon started coming home at different times every day. There were days when he was very busy and worked late. Some days he came home on time. Of course, my husband didn't know that I was investigating his affair, so I had to treat him as usual, but I couldn't have a conversation with him, and nor could Sherry, because of how much we despised him after what he did. Even during the meals, day after day, conversation was zilch, and often, not even a single word was uttered. One day, I received a message from Gideon saying that he had to work late, but he came home earlier than I expected. My darling Sherry and I were having a nice talk over dinner, but when Gideon came home all of a sudden, our conversation came to an instant halt. I actually felt the air in the room get colder by a couple degrees. I'm home, guys. Turns out I could come home early today after all. I also brought back some of your favorite cake, Sherry. Why the hell are you guys ignoring me all the time? By this point, he was talking to us pretty loudly, but of course, we kept on ignoring him. Where the hell is my food? He was getting furious, but of course, we couldn't care less and paid no attention to his exhilarating tantrum. Why? Because he said he had to work late, so I didn't prepare anything for him? In any case, I was sure that by I could come home early today meant that his girlfriend couldn't make it to their little romantic soiree together. Who the hell do you think you are, ignoring the person who provides everything you need to survive? As he shouted these words, he slammed his fist onto the table. The shockwave made the table bounce into the air for a split second, and as a result, a couple dishes fell off. The dishes shattered against the wooden floor, spilling a bunch of food all over the place, and making the floor what appeared to be vomit of a drunken crackhead just outside a smoky downtown jazz bar. And still, we ignored him. We ignored him for so long that he actually got scared. Wait a minute. Hang on. I'm not invisible, am I? I almost laughed when he said this as he began to place his hands all around his body. After I confirmed that he wasn't see-through, he still went on endeavoring to get something out of us, but of course, we ignored him. You're mad because I didn't come home on time? I'm sorry, honey. I guess I should just get my own dinner. I'll just leave the cake on the kitchen counter, okay? He's saying such things, still feeling around all over his body, trying to reconfirm that he really wasn't invisible, but I never wavered in ignoring him. No matter how many times he could check, there's no damn way he'd be transparent. And that's only because we were simply ignoring him, treating him as though he didn't exist. Hey, Sherry, sweetie, how about going to the amusement park next weekend? I'm thinking about buying some tickets. It's been a long time we last went to that place, hasn't it? He was trying so hard to get her attention, but she was being such a good girl. Gideon went on talking, trying to get our attention back, and frankly, I wondered how in the world he could talk to us when we were both considering him dead to us. Hey, guys. I'm begging you, answer me. Why are you two treating me as if I don't even exist? Did I do something wrong? Come on, guys. Tell me, please. Am I on my way to heaven? Maybe you can't even see me for some reason. Maybe I'm something beyond invisible. Maybe I don't even exist anymore. Or maybe I have some kind of superpower. I could be the leader of the Justice League right now. I can't tell you how many times I've had to hold back my laughter because he's just been talking about hilarious nonsense to himself whilst being ignored for so long. Perhaps he really got scared because of how much we weren't paying attention to him because he bolted out of the house. I am still alive, right? Is the mysterious statement that he left behind. Sherry and I laughed. Daddy thought he was a ghost. He looked so funny. He almost made me laugh, darling. Great job ignoring him. I think you deserve a piece of that cake. We got up from the table laughing, and we laughed and laughed as we washed our dishes and helped ourselves to some slice of cake. He doesn't think we know that he's cheating on us. He merely got frightened and went out to see if he was still alive. Perhaps he assumed that if he had tried to stay at home, he would eventually think he really had become a spirit of sorts. By the time 2 weeks had passed since my husband ran from the house, my daughter and I were living happily in a traitor-free environment without anyone to suspect of foul play and without source of negative emotions whatsoever. And then the papers arrived from the detective agency. I paid a visit to the lawyer's office and asked for a lawyer to help us in a court case against Gideon. After we made sure that all the evidence was in place with a professional's help, we began the divorce proceedings quickly. The service of the lawyers were absolutely fantastic and things went very smoothly. All in one day they prepared the documents, walked me through the legal procedure, and even guided me as I signed them right then and there. It was sent to my husband and Anna, and they informed me that it would arrive to their doorstep in 2 or 3 days. Since I didn't know where my husband was at the moment, we made sure the documents would arrive at his job and at his parents' house. 2 days after we sent the content certificate, Anna suddenly contacted me. The content certified letter specifically stated the receiver not to contact the sender directly, but perhaps she failed to notice it. I didn't want to answer the phone, but I thought that Sherry would be concerned after a while if it kept ringing, so I decided to answer. When I did, it came across way too loud and clear through the phone that she was pissed off beyond all recognition. What the hell are you doing demanding alimony from me, Allison? You're out of your mind. You're crazy. You're bonkers. Why would you ever think I wouldn't sue you? Because your husband forced himself on me. I have no obligation to pay you anything. I actually want alimony as much as you do. She didn't seem to be cooperative regarding the demands for alimony, but I kept a calm mind as I talked to her. I mean, perhaps he did force himself onto you, but you still gave voluntary consent to have a romantic relationship with him. The simple fact that you accepted his proposal, forceful or not, makes you just as guilty as he. And additionally, the fact that you've been in a relationship for so long makes everything crystal clear. This was never a one-way street. You also had feelings for him, which is why you never backed out of the affair, because it was too late, and that's why you're getting demands to pay alimony. You betrayed my daughter's trust, Anna. Do you have any idea how much pain she's been going through? He told me that if I refused him, he would destroy my relationship with you. Ironic, isn't it? Because it's destroyed anyway. If you truly felt like he was backing you into a corner, allowing you no way out, you should have talked to me about it. You've been actively having an affair with him for 10 whole years. That excuse is not going to convince anyone. How do you know about that? That furious Anna was now nowhere to be seen. I could definitely hear her voice shaking now. Yes, you heard right. Gideon and Anna had actively been having an affair for 10 whole years, and there's firm evidence supporting the conclusion. When the detective agency was doing their investigation, I'd also asked them to find out how long he'd been having the affair. To do so, they had to investigate his belongings. While my husband was away for work one day, a staff member from the detective agency was scheduled to visit my home. They asked me to lead them to my husband's room, and I helped with the search. After perhaps 20 minutes, we found his old computer, which he had replaced in his closet. After repairing the computer and recovering the data, it was discovered that the computer contained emails sent between Gideon and Anna. The exchange went on for years, with the oldest recorded message sent by Anna, no less, on June 6, 2013, and that was 10 years ago. When I told Anna all of this, she started to bawl on the phone. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for hurting you and for hurting darling Sherry. I promise I'll make sure you never see me again. I'll keep apologizing until you forgive me, and I'll do whatever you say. Please, I'm begging you. Please don't ask me to pay alimony." In her voice, I could literally hear her getting down on her knees as she begged me. I finally had the chance to raise my voice to my best friend, who had less common sense than a drowned codfish, by pleading me to have merciful and hold off demanding alimony for her crime. "Apologize to me for the rest of your life? Don't ever contact me or have anything to do with me or my daughter ever again. You destroyed our family, and now what? You want me to spare poor little Anna of her heinous deed and decide not to demand compensation? Don't you dare do anything other than what I'm about to ask you. First, stay out of our damn lives, and second, take responsibility for what you've done and pay well for it." I couldn't believe she was ever my friend, but then she starts to tell me why she doesn't want me to demand alimony from her. "Last year, both of my parents were killed in a car accident, leaving my baby brother, who's 17 now, without any guardian to support him. His grandparents were retired in Australia, and I'm literally all he has left, and I want him to go to college. I'm working every day to save up for his school fees, and I can't afford to pay alimony. I know apologizing won't be of any use, and I know you'll never forgive me, but I simply can't afford to pay you alimony without sacrificing my brother's future. Please, Allison. We've been best friends for so long. We did so many things together in school, particularly matching costumes and stuff like that, and we had a lot of fun, didn't we? Who would have thought we'd also have matching husbands? And after that, the same stupid bullshit of begging for my forgiveness." I was sick of her voice. I was sick of her begging. I was sick of her. "You were cheating on my husband and destroyed our happy family, and now that your own family is in trouble, you won't dare take responsibility. You're an adult, for crying out loud. Freaking take responsibility for what you've done. I will apologize for the rest of my life, and I will do whatever it takes. Just anything but paying alimony, please. Please, please." Even after everything I'd said, she still wouldn't back down. I was just about to vomit hearing her whiny, pathetic voice crying the whole time, so I said one last thing before hanging up the phone. "I know that for those who engage in an unfaithful affair, should the victim request it, the perpetrators must be responsible and pay alimony accordingly. This is common knowledge, and yet you never try to stop the affair, so the responsibility is yours to bear. I expect you to face up to it." I never heard from her again after that. Soon after that call, I got another call, this time from my husband. My husband was exactly like Anna. He told me stupid bullshit about how she forced him to go out with her and that he couldn't say no, and so on and so forth. Blah, blah, blah. I never spoke a word and just hung up during his sentence. I was also feeling a little under the weather and fell asleep on the couch. While I was asleep, Sherry had apparently called my parents from my phone, and I explained the situation to them. By the time I woke up, Sherry and my parents had cooked for me and were watching me sleep. Sherry was snoozing too, with that cute little stuffed bunny doll she loved. My parents explained what their granddaughter did, and I cried because my daughter had grown up so much. We were spending such a wonderful time together as a family when all of a sudden, out of the blue, Gideon, who had lost so much weight since I last saw him, unlocked the front door and trudged inside. I don't know how long it had been since we had seen each other, but he looked so different. None of us knew who he was, and because he had changed so much, we saw him as a suspicious person. The first time Sherry saw him, she got so scared and started to cry. Sherry, sweetie, it's me, your daddy. Calling me a prowler is cruel. So cruel. He looked like he was about to cry too. Then he started talking, his voice cracking and his legs shaking. I saw the content certificate. I'm so sorry. I swear on my life I will never do this again. I just don't want a divorce. That's all I want to talk about. I know you don't love me anymore, and I know I can't bring you to love me again, but I want to see my darling Sherry grow up as much as you do, Allison. He was sobbing by this point, but it's not taking any effect on me. I'm sorry. I can't believe you anymore. Not only have you lost my love, you've lost my trust forever. I just can't anymore. Please, please, please. My husband was on his knees. My father spoke up. I suppose you understand the gravity of what you've done, son. I demand you stay away from my daughter and granddaughter. They mean more to me than life itself, and I won't have any scummy bastard trying to ruin their happiness. His voice was terrifying. Gideon went a few shades paler and tried to run away out the front door, but he turned around once more and looked at Sherry, who was wiping her eyes and sniffing snot from her lips. Sherry, my dearest. You need your daddy, right? You want your daddy to stay, right? He was actually trying to appeal to her, but then Sherry finished him off. Who is this old man, Mommy? I don't want him in my house. Gideon then left the house in tears. After that, the divorce was finalized through my lawyers. Sherry and I moved back into my parents' house. The school district was the same, so fortunately, my daughter's environment didn't change much. My husband couldn't afford to pay the rent for the big apartment anymore, and after selling it, he moved into a dirt cheap flat somewhere on the outskirts of the city. At work, word somehow got out that he had divorced his wife because of an affair. As a result, all the female employees lost their trust in him, and they all stopped talking to him. Gideon became increasingly lonely in the company. His reputation eventually became one as an unfaithful, untrustworthy employee, and thus, getting promoted to greatness was now a dream of the internally condemned. His salary never went up, and his superiors never gave him any challenging work or projects to handle. It seems Gideon doesn't consider his job to be very rewarding anymore, and now his personal and professional life both seem to be in limbo. As for Anna, she had to earn money for her baby brother, who was apparently at the top of his school for his studies. He showed a lot of potential for a scholarship, and due to his parents passing in a car accident, Anna was responsible for providing the money that paid for her brother's tuition and other miscellaneous school fees. But now, she has to pay alimony for what she did. She simply didn't have enough, so she changed her job, and now she is working nonstop. Eventually, her brother found out about her affair, and now he won't talk to her anymore. Just pay me the money and I'll be fine. I really despise an unfaithful, dirty woman like you, Anna. I scorn you, is what he told her before he went away to university somewhere in a rural area. Anna was left with her own misery, paying for her brother's school and paying me the alimony, never getting a chance to have anything to do with her darling brother again. As for Sherry and I, we are now living very happily in her grandparents' home. I've started a new job myself, and although I'm in a new, unfamiliar environment, I'm going to do my best to make enough money for my daughter's bright future. Sherry's seen some traumatic things in life at such an early age, but ever since she started spending more time with her angelic grandparents, she's getting more energetic and happy with every passing day. From now on, I'm going to do everything in my power to protect her from negative experiences and make sure that she lives the happy life. This story was sent to me over the weekend, and as you will learn, her husband supported her in every way he could. Turns out she was cheating on him, but he had the last laugh. Let's go. My wife and I have been married for 14 years. I am 48 and my wife is 47. When I met her, she was a waitress at an all-night diner, but she always had dreams of working in finance or the banking industry, but she could never break ground in that field. So, when we met and we started dating, I learned of her goals. I told her that I would do everything in my power to help make those dreams come true. So, with a lot of dedication from both of us, she eventually got a job as a finance manager at a local bank. It was a great position for her and it paid very well, but she did not start as a finance manager. She had to work through a few of the positions at the bank, which in turn made her a more well-rounded manager. As the years went by, her salary kept increasing by leaps and bounds until it grew to well over $100,000 per year, way more than what I was making. I am a manager for an automotive shop, and I don't come close to that. I was making about $48,000 per year, but I still helped her out financially with student loans so she can continue her education in her field. She wouldn't have any money left to pay her bills. When she first started working at the bank many years ago, when we first started dating, I would give her a couple of $100 here and there to make sure she could pay her rent and other bills on time. Eventually, she was doing so well that she didn't need my help anymore. And she was able to pay off all of her student loans. And she even offered to help me out financially. But I declined because I didn't need it. With both of us making good money, we went on vacations, traveled to different countries, and even took a few of our friends with us on vacation and paid for them to join us. Things were really looking good. By this time, we had been dating for about 4 years before we got married. She didn't have any kids. I had one son from a previous relationship, and he was on his own. So it was just the two of us, but things started to slowly change about a year ago. She became distant. She was working longer hours, and she was always tired when she got home. I understood. So I tried to take the pressure off her by cooking for her and cleaning the house. When I got home, I always got home before she did. So I had time to put in a little housework before she walked through the door. But it seemed like the more I did to help out, the more she wanted me to do. And she would always find something else that needed to be done. So I started to feel like I was never doing enough. Again, I just made a mental note for the next time. But I started to notice that she was spending more money, buying new clothes, and going out to lunch with her friends more often. I didn't put too much thought into her spending money on clothes. I just figured she wanted to make a good impression on her subordinates and the big boss. About a year ago, I really started seeing a slight shift in her behavior. She was more agitated with me, and she would snap at me for the smallest things. And I just talked it up to stress from work. I knew she was under a lot of pressure. So I tried to be understanding and supportive, but no matter what I did, it seemed like it was never enough. Then about 6 months ago, she started working even longer hours. She was never home. And when she was home, she was always on her phone or working on her laptop. I asked her what was going on, and she just brushed me off and said she was fine, but I could tell something was wrong. But I didn't want to pry too much. So I just left it alone thinking she would come to me when she was ready to talk. But her behavior started to get worse, and she started talking down to me like I was beneath her. And she even started calling me names. I had never seen this side of her before, and I didn't know how to deal with it. So I just tried to ignore it, thinking she would eventually snap out of it. But one day, about 3 months ago, I came home from work and she was already home and she was on the phone and she was yelling at someone. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I could tell she was angry. So I just went to the kitchen to start dinner. After a few minutes had passed, I went back into the living room and told her I was starting dinner. She said she wasn't hungry, and she said she was going to bed. I didn't want to argue with her, so I just let her go. but I couldn't help but wonder what she was so angry about. Fast forward a few days, and I get a text from my wife as I am driving home saying she would be working late. I replied and said, okay. Her meaning of working late is working until 7 to 8 p.m. But on this night, it was way past 9 p.m., and she wasn't home yet. So I decided to drive up to the bank where she worked, and her car wasn't there. So I thought maybe she had gone to hang out with her friends and didn't say anything to me. But she would always tell me she was going to hang out with her friends or coworkers, but she didn't this time. So I started to get worried and I called her phone, but she didn't answer. So I left her a voicemail asking her to call me when she got a chance. She never called me back. And while I was driving home, I was hoping she would text me or something, but that didn't happen. At about 1:30ish a.m., she comes strolling in and went straight to the shower without saying anything to me. At this point, I was angry. After she got out of the shower, I confronted her and asked why in the hell did she not tell me she was going somewhere after work and not return my calls or text messages. She fires back and says, look, I was just hanging out with some of my friends and coworkers. And then she says, I need to stop trying to control her. I said to her, excuse me, really? I then said, okay, walked off and went to sleep in the guest bedroom. The next morning, I went to work without saying anything to her, not one word. And she didn't say anything to me the whole day. No apologies, nothing. That set off alarm bells. The fact that she did not apologize for failing to communicate with me was enough for me to be suspicious. Plus, I knew something was going on with her. I just didn't know what it was. So, I decided to do some snooping around and see if I could find anything, but I didn't want her to know I was snooping. So, I had to be careful. I started going through her things when she wasn't home. And I found some strange things like credit card statements with charges that didn't make sense and hotel receipts. But I still didn't have any concrete evidence that she was doing anything, and I couldn't accuse her of anything. But I did find something else that would give me something of interest. I found a notebook with what looked to be a list of names, phone numbers, and dates. At first, I thought it was just a list of her friends or something, but then I noticed there were some men's names as well. So, I decided to call one of the numbers on the list, and it turned out to be a hotel. I asked the person on the phone if they could tell me if this person had stayed there, and they said they could not give me that information due to privacy reasons. But I asked the person on the other end if they could check and see if the person had checked out, and they said they could not give me that information either. So, I was thinking to myself, why would my wife have a list of men's names and phone numbers in her notebook with dates next to them? After seeing that, I just knew she was cheating on me. I didn't need to ask any questions. So, I just packed up my things and left and stayed with a longtime friend of mine. I conferred with my friend and told him what I found. He said that names and dates don't amount to much, but I said something is going on and I need to find out what it is. I was gone for 2 days and I didn't hear anything from my wife. So, I decided to hire a private investigator. I didn't have time to keep wondering what she was doing. Plus, she was angry when I confronted her about not communicating with me. And the fact that she had names and dates solidifies something was going on. So, on day 3, I decided to call a private investigator to see what he could find out. I gave him my wife's name, where she worked, some of the friends I knew she hung out with, and some other information. And he said he would get right on it. The next day, the private investigator called me and said he had some information for me, but wanted to meet in person. So, we set up a meeting. He showed me footage of my wife leaving work with a few of her coworkers. They all left in separate cars. Then they went to a fancy restaurant and they all had dinner. On one occasion, the private investigator noticed my wife reaching in her purse and texting someone. About an hour later, everyone was done with dinner. And everyone walked out of the restaurant, including my wife. Everyone left except my wife, who stayed behind and waited in her car. About a half hour later, a car pulls up next to hers. A guy gets out, walks over to my wife's car. She gets out and they embrace and they start kissing. After they embrace and kiss, they get into their vehicles and drive to a hotel. That's about 30 minutes away. They get out and walk past the front desk as if they already had a room. The private investigator gave me the footage and said he would continue to follow them, but I had seen enough. I didn't need to see any more. The only thing I wanted to do now was get out. So, after getting the footage, I called a lawyer the next day. We reside in New York, which is a false state and a no-fault state. That much he did tell me right away. I gave him the footage of my wife kissing another man and going to a hotel afterwards. He filed for divorce on my behalf. And I told him to go after everything, alimony, retirement, anything I could get. As the days go by, I rarely talk to my wife. I only went back to the house to get more things when she was not home. And the big stuff I put into storage. Fast forward 3 weeks, and my wife has served with divorce papers at her job. And the only thing she communicated to me was I wasn't getting a dime from her. I didn't respond to her statement. I was just waiting for the divorce hearing and showing the court the evidence. At the divorce hearing, my lawyer went for the juggler. We went for alimony, retirement, and anything my lawyer could get. Anyway, after it was all said and done, I got $1,700 per month in alimony for 6 years. I wasn't able to get more because of the money I was making at my job. As far as the house, we didn't own it. We were renting it. We had a condo that we sold just over a year ago. After the hearing was done, I never heard from or saw my ex-wife again. I didn't care. I was enjoying the passive income she was giving me. Her cheating cost her over $100,000 over the 6 years. She will finance my next house. I want to thank Tony for taking the time to share my story. It took me a long time to have the nerve to share this. Even after I did individual counseling, it took me some time to come to terms. I knew things had changed when Ronnie Stetzer came back to town. He was at one time my wife's fiancé, Cindy. Ronnie had broken up with Cindy a year before I met her. She made no secret of the fact that Ronnie had broken her heart when he decided to break up with her and marry a rich woman 10 years older. I started dating Cindy. She didn't have the great looks of a model or movie star, but she was very pretty. She had soft brown hair and brown eyes and a beautiful face, but it was her loving heart that drew me to her. We were married about a year later, and our little girl Amanda was born 9 months later. Life was good for 18 of our 19 years together. We had our disagreements, but nothing serious until recently. Usually our disagreements came when we shared responsibilities. Cindy was the only child in the family and was spoiled by her parents. Over the years, however, she learned to keep her stubbornness in check. When our daughter was born, Amanda became my little princess. We were especially close and our family was very friendly. However, over the last year, Cindy and I seemed to be drifting apart. I began to realize that we were doing less and less together. However, our lovemaking was very good, and we did it at least twice a week and more often than that. Cindy seemed happiest when we were cuddling. I knew she loved me deeply. I still loved Cindy, but in a different way. It was no longer like the hot, passionate love we had felt when we were first married. We were like two old shoes that had known better days, but fit together well. Still, I loved my wife very much and especially loved the life we had built. When Amanda graduated from high school, the changes in Cindy seemed to accelerate. She seemed to be on the verge of a breakdown. And the closer it got to the time when Amanda would leave for college, the more uncomfortable Cindy became. I was now the chief of detectives for the sheriff's department, and I had 32 detectives under me. Since this county wasn't a high-crime county, the job wasn't too stressful. Cindy was still working as a dental hygienist. About a month after Amanda left for college, Ronnie showed up at a barbecue thrown by a couple, John and Smythe, who were more Cindy's friends than mine. Nevertheless, John and I got along just fine, since he owned a security company and we always had a lot to talk about. I had no idea Ronnie would be there, but Cindy certainly did. She immediately pulled away from me, which wasn't unusual, and started circling. But an hour later, I went looking for her and found her and Ronnie sitting on the porch. As I approached, Cindy's neck was slightly flushed, which meant she was up to something I wasn't going to like. She quickly introduced me to Ronnie, and my stomach clenched. As a cop, I had developed an inner instinct, and mine told me this was real trouble. Cindy tried to brush it off like she was surprised to see him, and they were just reminiscing about old times. But her neck turned red during the explanation. I decided I wasn't going to blow this whole thing out of proportion. As a police officer, I deal with extremely unpleasant situations many times. Nevertheless, it is necessary to handle them in a calm and professional manner. Sometimes that can be very difficult. The next working day after the barbecue, I checked on Ronnie through my channels. I learned that his wife had died of cancer a year ago. In all those years, Ronnie hadn't even had a speeding ticket, let alone other problems with the police. As the months went by, we saw Ronnie more and more often. I knew this was no accident, so I began to prepare for the worst. I figured that any day now, Cindy would want to talk to me about something. But as prepared as I was, Cindy blew me out of the water when she decided to do it. We had just finished a rare morning lovemaking session, and I thought that maybe all my worries had been for nothing. It was clear to me that Cindy still loved me as much as ever. Ted, I want to talk to you about something, she said nervously. And I don't want you to be angry. I want you to let me finish before you say anything. My stomach flipped. You know, Ronnie was my first love, she explained. We were engaged. Then he fell in love with Catherine, and we broke up. After his wife died, he was devastated. He's so lonely. He tells me he still loves me, and I have to admit I still love him. But at the same time, I love you. I didn't say a word and tried my best to control my breathing and stay calm. That gave Cindy courage because she smiled and continued. I still want to be your wife, but I want to be with Ronnie too. Ronnie and I talked it over and decided it would be fair for me to stay with you for a week and him for a week. I slipped out of bed, got dressed, and left without a word. I headed to my office and closed the door. The receptionist looked at my unshaven face but didn't ask. I told her I didn't want to be disturbed unless it was something serious. I was left alone. I sat in the unlit office for hours. I went over and over in my head the proposal my wife had made to me. It was the most selfish thing she could have done. It was clear to me that Cindy wanted to sit on two chairs. That can't happen. She would have to choose. Around 5 o'clock, I got home. I was really annoyed when I saw Ronnie's car in the driveway. I tried to pull myself together and use all my years of police training to stay calm. However, all that training didn't prepare me for anything like this. I found them in the living room sitting nervously. Cindy quickly stood up and walked over to me to kiss me. I pushed her away and saw that she was in pain, but I didn't care. We need to talk about this, Cindy said nervously. We don't have anything to talk about, I replied shortly. You either want to be with the asshole, or you want to be with me. You can't have him and me. I don't think you've fully thought this proposal through, Ronnie said, looking at me nervously. I'm not going to take your wife away from you. I'm just going to give her the extra love she needs. Yes, we'll share her, but she'll never miss any of her marital obligations. Now, my inner rage was almost on the verge of boiling over. That smug bastard had just told me that I should let Cindy sleep with him because she needed the extra love. They both made me cringe. And in that moment, I realized my marriage was over. Except, I said, looking fiercely at Ronnie, the marital duty of giving up all the others. No, I'm not going to agree to that. Ted, Cindy said with an expression that told me she was now upset with me. It's going to happen. The question is whether or not you're going to be a part of it. No, I said. Both of you leave. Cindy burst into tears. Ted, please give me this. I've been a faithful wife all these years. Ronnie was my first love, but I don't want to lose you. I love you so much, but I love Ronnie too. I snorted and looked at Ronnie. Tell me, Ronnie, if your late wife had come to you with a similar offer, would you have accepted it? He smiled at me and nodded. If it could make my wife happy, I'd gladly accept it. Bullshit, I said with more force than I meant to. But I wanted to follow through with my thoughts, so I turned to Cindy. What about you, Cindy? If I came home with an ex-girlfriend and told you I wanted you to share me with her, how would you feel about that? Cindy hesitated for a few seconds before answering. I'd probably be upset like you are right now, but in the end I'd agree, because I really love you and want you to be happy. More bullshit, I said, shaking my head. I'm going to contact my lawyer in the morning to negotiate a divorce. I think the division of assets should be pretty straightforward. The house only has a small mortgage. Once that is paid off, we will split the proceeds. Our investments, savings, and current accounts will be split. Amanda's college fund will remain untouched. There will be no alimony since you'll be living with the asshole sitting there. Now both of you please leave. Cindy was crying to the point of tears as Ronnie took her hand. Walking to the door, Cindy turned to me and said, "If you change your mind, I love you very much. I want you in my life." As soon as they left, the silence of the house came over me. I felt empty inside, but my years on the force had taught me stamina. I put the wound in the box and closed the lid. Then I went to my office and started making a list of what I needed to do. I knew exactly what kind of lawyer I was going to get. Her name was Sally Leone. She had a reputation as a real shark in divorce proceedings. She usually represented wives, and the poor husbands never knew what hit them. Over the years, our paths crossed. I helped her many times when needed. I looked over the list and realized there was one thing I hadn't done yet. I need to call Amanda and let her know what's going on. It broke my heart to have to tell my little girl what her mother was doing. It took Amanda a full 5 minutes to calm down so I could truly understand her. What happened next was a surprise. That damn whore did this to you. Daddy, she said venomously. All these years you've been so good to her, to us. And now she's stabbing you in the back. If she does that, I want nothing to do with her. Amanda, I said calmly, you're very upset right now and I understand how you feel. But Cindy is your mother and she loves you unconditionally. Don't ruin your relationship with your mother over this. We'll all lose if you do. Can't you at least wait a few days before you talk to her? What if she calls me? Amanda asked. If she does, I'll give her the full story. Please, if she calls, don't answer for a few days. Promise me you'll do that. Amanda reluctantly agreed to honor my request. Later that night, Cindy called me very concerned. She had tried to call Amanda but was unable to. I explained that I had spoken to her and our daughter was obviously upset. I explained to Cindy that Amanda wanted to calm down before talking to either of us about the subject. I bet you turned her against me, Cindy accused me. I bet you painted the most disgusting picture you could. Cindy, how can I paint a worse picture than you've already painted? I said calmly, knowing it would make her angry. Her mother wants her father to let her sleep with another man. Before Cindy could say anything, I decided to tackle one of the items on my list. Now that I have you on the line, you should hire a lawyer. Please, Ted, don't do this, she cried again. It's killing me that you want me out of your life. I love you so much. Can't you give in to me a little? There's nothing to discuss, Cindy, I said and hung up the phone. I took the next week off to focus on getting all the ducks in a row, but the nights were horrible. Lying in bed alone was unbearably lonely. I would wake up in the morning and reach for Cindy, only to remember why she wasn't there. The first thing I did was call Sally, but I was unpleasantly surprised when she told me that Ronnie had already called her. That bastard was secretive. He must have already figured out who the best divorce lawyer was, and now he was ahead of me. Well, if I can't hire you, I said, somewhat offended, can you recommend someone I should hire? I said Ronnie contacted me. Sally snorted. I didn't say he hired me. In fact, I told him you'd already hired me. Wow, I said with great relief. I really appreciate you doing this. Ted, most men in this town think I'm a piece of shit, she said bitterly. You're one of the few who has always treated me with respect. You're one of the few who has tried your best to help me. I've always appreciated that. There's no way I would ever turn against you. Again, I'm very grateful. You'll still have to pay my fee, she said with a laugh. I really appreciate you, but I have to pay for the lights too. It's not a problem, Sally, and thanks again. Even days later, the phone conversation between Cindy and Amanda didn't go well. According to both, it degenerated into a shouting match with ugly names thrown back and forth. Cindy called me afterward, almost hysterical that she had lost her daughter forever. I told her I'd talk to Amanda and try to work things out, but it turned out to be much harder than I could have imagined. Amanda was angry when I spoke to her a week later. According to my daughter, she told her mother that she wanted nothing to do with her. Cindy would not be invited to the prom or wedding, and if she had grandchildren, she would never meet them. Now I understood why Cindy was hysterical. The calls from Cindy continued until the day of the divorce. She kept begging me to reconsider and accept their plan. I, of course, continued to refuse. After the divorce, the calls stopped and I tried to move on. Thank goodness I had a job. As chief of detectives, my schedule was pretty flexible. Over the next 6 months, I became much more hands-on. I was often able to point some of my new detectives in the right direction. That way, they didn't waste any time descending into obvious dead ends. I also began to review our unsolved cases. As a result of my efforts, we were able to close a long-forgotten murder case. It turned out that the victim's ex-boyfriend had done it. They always had the evidence, but they just didn't see it. For that, I got a commendation and a raise. Cindy and Ronnie got married about a month after the divorce. They wanted to buy my half of the house. But the thought of Ronnie living in my house turned me inside out. Ronnie threatened to go to court to force me to sell it. I told him to go ahead and sue. I was friendly with all the appraisers in town, and when I explained my dilemma, they all agreed to help. The appraisals were much higher than the house was worth, yet Ronnie didn't care. He paid a ridiculously high price for my house. It pissed me off, but there was nothing I could do about it. In the end, though, I liked the result. I got a lot more money out of the sale than I could have. The divorce went better than I thought it would. I have Sally to thank for that. Her analysis was so thorough that she found information that helped me. The down payment on the house was inherited from my grandfather. Thus, the amount was not considered community property. As a result, I received about 75% of the sale proceeds. With that money, I bought myself a cash apartment not far from work. Life goes on, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt. All those years with Cindy, and here she decided I wasn't enough. I tried to go back to the dating scene, but it was even more depressing. Most of the women I dated came with a ton of baggage. Some of them were just plain intimidating, and almost all of them desperately wanted to get married. I, on the other hand, wasn't interested in marriage. I'd been down that road before. One night, about 8 months after Ronnie and Cindy's wedding, I was having dinner at a restaurant. I didn't realize they were there until Cindy sat down. I was surprised to see my ex-wife, but decided I wasn't going to be nasty. I looked around and saw Ronnie sitting at a table at the other end, studying the menu. "How are you doing, Ted?" Cindy asked quietly. "I'm doing fine," I replied with a sad smile. "How are you doing?" "I still miss you every day," she said, placing her hand on top of mine. I still love you very much. If you ever find it in your heart to accept Ronnie, I'd love to be with you again. At first, I was going to pull my arm out from under her and tell her to go for a walk, but then an idea hit me. I'd have to talk to Amanda first, but it might be something I could do to get back at that asshole, Ronnie. I miss you too, Cindy, I admitted honestly. I hate waking up and you're gone, but you're a married woman now. By the way, I think your husband is looking for you. Cindy looked at Ronnie and he was looking at her with a what the hell expression. She just nodded to her husband and stood up. Remember, I still love you. That same night, I called Amanda and explained what I wanted to do. At first, she was horrified and told me I was giving in to this slut. Then I explained why I wanted to do it, and she started giggling. The giggling turned to laughter. That's just great, Daddy, Amanda finally said. Go for it. The next day, I called Cindy with my daughter's blessing. I told her I wanted to talk to her and Ronnie. I told her I was thinking about our conversation yesterday. Cindy was thrilled and we agreed to meet at our old house at 7 o'clock that evening. I arrived at 7 sharp. Cindy led me into the living room. It was disheartening to see him sitting on the couch in my former home. However, I took some satisfaction in the annoyed expression on his face. It was clear to me that Cindy had blamed this meeting on Ronnie at the last minute. He glared at me like a dagger. I pretended not to notice anything. After pouring us each a cup of coffee, Cindy settled on the couch between Ronnie and me. I got right to the point. Cindy, what did you mean when you said the offer to share still stands? A smile appeared on Cindy's face. Yes, absolutely, the offer still stands. I told you that I still love you deeply. It's just that I love Ronnie too. Well, if you agree, I said, trying to feign nervousness, I'd say yes. I don't have anyone right now. At least this way I'll have you part of the time. I've been so lonely without you. Cindy rushed over to me. She kissed me as passionately as we had never kissed before. Ted, you've made me the happiest woman in the world. Wait a minute, Ronnie said, standing up. We haven't discussed this yet. It's the same thing you suggested, I told Ronnie calmly. Yes, but still, Cindy, you and I need to discuss it first. Ronnie was very excited. We've already discussed it, Cindy said, a little surprised by Ronnie's objection. When did we discuss it? Ronnie blushed. Don't forget, we discussed it before we presented Ted with the plan. You said you were more than willing to share. Ronnie was discouraged by his own words and there was nothing he could do about it. Still, he wasn't going to give up so easily. I still think we need to talk about it. The thought of pointing out to Ronnie what a hypocrite he was on my tongue. It was the same deal he'd offered me, but now the shoe was on the other foot. He was the husband and I was the ex. However, I decided to let this drama play out between Cindy and Ronnie without my involvement. Okay, I'll leave and wait to hear from you, Cindy, I said, kissing her before leaving. Once back in the car, I started laughing my ass off. I had switched roles with this asshole. Now he was wriggling like a worm. I wish I had been a fly on the wall that night. The next day, I got a call from Cindy saying that Ronnie was very upset. But when she told him she was going to leave, he agreed. Cindy would spend 1 week with me and 1 week with Ronnie. Of course, at Ronnie's insistence, none of this could be done until I was tested for STDs. I agreed on the condition that they both get tested as well. Cindy didn't object, but Ronnie was not happy. As it turned out, we were all clean. The next week, I stopped by to pick up Cindy. Cindy looked good when she came to the door. Ronnie, on the other hand, looked like he had murder on his mind. I grabbed Cindy and kissed her hard. Then I grabbed her 2 suitcases and we walked out. I decided that I would do everything I could to make this night special. I took her out to dinner and then to the dance. Then we went back to my apartment. I want you inside me, she whispered hoarsely. When you're inside me, I know you still love me. I loved Cindy, but not enough to want her to be my wife again. We lay there and cuddled until I fell asleep. The week went by quickly and very pleasantly. I had to work, so I told Cindy that she could go home for the day if she wanted. Cindy was adamant she was my wife for the week. That made me cringe inwardly. But hell, if that's what she wanted to believe, that was fine with me. All I was interested in was fucking Ronnie's wife. She cleaned the house, went grocery shopping, washed my clothes, cooked meals, and even set our dinner times. I had a blast. I even got Amanda to talk to her mother without yelling at her. Of course, Amanda was aware of my plan, and I'm sure she laughed at how clueless her mother was. As I drove Cindy home, Ronnie looked both pleased and angry. Whatever anger was simmering inside him, he kept it in check. He kissed Cindy passionately right in front of me. I just pecked Cindy on the cheek, said, "I love you," and left. For the next 3 months, our new agreement was honored. I have to say, for me, this arrangement was great. Fucking Cindy after the divorce was a hit, especially since it was her suggestion. I was now getting laid 6 or 7 times a week. Another benefit of this new arrangement was that I convinced Amanda to come home and spend some time with us. I'm not sure if my daughter did this because she missed her mother or if she was making fun of her. One day, maybe 2 months after this new arrangement began, I was checking on my 3 detective teams working different crime scenes. Just then, a call came over the radio about a disturbance at Mick's Tavern. Since I was only a block away from there, I decided to check it out for myself. When I got there, I found that there had been an altercation with a drunken customer. I was surprised to find out that the drunk was Ronnie. I decided to take care of the problem. After letting the 2 officers go, I turned to Ronnie. "Come on, Ronnie," I said, taking his hand. "I'll take you home. I don't need your fucking help." "Ronnie, your choice is either I take you home or you go to jail. What's better for you?" He decided to take the ride home. All the way to my old house, we didn't say a word. When he got out of my car, all he said was, "Fuck you." By the 4th month, Ronnie was less and less happy about our arrangement. He and Cindy argued about it more and more. He wanted it to stop, but Cindy couldn't understand why. I didn't interfere in their discussions. I just kept telling Cindy that she was wonderful and continued to get all the sex I wanted for a week. This arrangement allowed me to sleep with her much more than when we were married. Finally, when I came to pick up Cindy for a week, about 5 months after our agreement, things came to a boil. Ronnie and Cindy were yelling at each other in the yard. I decided to try to calm them down. "I think you guys should calm down," I said with a smirk, "or someone will call the police." "Fuck you," Ronnie threw angrily before turning to Cindy again. "If you go with him, then our relationship is over." "We had a deal, Ronnie," she said with a nasty note in her voice. Since I've known Ronnie, I've never seen my ex-wife speak to her new husband with anything other than affection. "The agreement is bullshit," Ronnie yelled. "And I'm telling you again that if you go with him, it's over." "You can't be serious," Cindy said in a dismissive tone. "You were the one who came up with the idea of the exchange a long time ago." With those words, Ronnie stormed into the house and slammed the door shut. I looked at Cindy questioningly. "He's just having a bad day," Cindy said, taking my hand. "He'll get over it, and everything will go back to normal." Things didn't go back to normal. Apparently, Ronnie had moved out. Cindy tried to talk to him, but he was adamant. They were done. Around noon on Wednesday, Cindy called me and told me what had happened. "He left me, Ted," she said, sobbing. "Can I move in with you?" "Yes, I'll be at your place on Monday when it's time for my regular week," I said cheerfully. "But Ronnie's gone," Cindy said confused. "I want to come back to you completely. I realize I made a huge mistake. Everything Ronnie said about sharing was just bullshit to keep us apart. I want things to go back to the way they were." "Well, you see, Cindy," I said, feigning embarrassment. "You wanted me to share you. You didn't want me to work full-time. So I'm used to you being just a part-time wife." I don't think that's changed with Ronnie gone. So you still want me to pick you up on Monday? Cindy started sobbing uncontrollably, and silence followed. For a moment, I thought she had hung up, but the bitter sobbing resumed. Finally, after several attempts, Cindy regained her speech and stammering said, "Yes, yes, please, Ted, I'd really like it if you." 2 months ago, my wife of 10 years, I'm 35, she was 34, tragically passed away in a car accident, hit by a drunk driver in broad daylight. I cried nonstop for 3 days. We were planning on having kids, and I had started a good paying job a year earlier, and we just purchased our first home just 2 months before her death. I just couldn't and still can't believe she is really gone from my life. It's like just yesterday, everything was heading in the right direction and would soon raise a family. She seemed happy in our marriage and stated how proud of me she was. The following week after the accident, I received her phone, which was locked. After a week, I found out how to unlock it by an obvious code I didn't think of earlier. I simply just wanted it to keep photos in her memory, photos of us, and so forth. But I saw some odd things in her photos, included photos of her in someone else's house, a house which I had never seen before, taking provocative images. I continued scrolling down and seen the most heart-wrenching thing I have ever seen, which was her with another man. It was nothing sexual, but they were in a place that was obviously his. And just how close they were, I just knew that this was an affair. The guy my wife had an affair with showed up at her funeral. I felt like I got stabbed in the gut when I realized I seen him there. I began reading her texts, and first, I found out that she was on her way back from his place. 3 hours before the accident, she texted him saying, "I'm on my way." I knew that meant he was the last one to see my wife, not only see her, but having an intimate moment with her. And she would still be here right now if she wasn't seeing him. I feel like I'm going through a death of a loved one and a breakup at the same time. She did this behind my back and will never know that I found out. In a way, I feel she got to escape the heartbreak she put me through. Although I fully understand death is much worse. And even knowing everything, I know I would never ever wish this or any pain upon her. I found out not only through her texts, but her Facebook messages. Something that absolutely enraged me is that she told her closest friend that this guy from work wanted to take her out to dinner. Her friend encouraged her to go out with him. It enraged me because I knew her as well. And in person, she was always very nice. But my wife was asking her to get confirmation. And she said, "No, you're married. Do not go out with him." I honestly feel like she wouldn't have done it. But her best friend was like, "Oh, is he hot? Oh, do it. Go have fun." It's just enraging. This happened 6 months ago when she asked her friend about it. A few days later, she talked to her friend about how after dinner, she went to his place and had sex multiple times. When I read that, I honestly got physically sick. I honestly started going through a breakdown, vomiting in the toilet, then crying on the bathroom floor. I just can't imagine that this stuff actually happened, but it did. How could she do this? But as the days passed and the initial shock began to slow down, I started piecing things together. At the funeral, I noticed something a little unusual, which was this best friend of hers talking to one of her coworkers. This was a friend from high school, and there was no reason she should have known any of her coworkers, but she was in fact talking to her coworker who she had the affair with. Then she came and talked to me and gave me a hug. The guy who my wife was having an affair with came and shook my hand. Something about that just makes me feel sick. Like I was being humiliated in a moment of grief. There was him and her best friend who knew about her affair. I couldn't help but wonder, did her coworkers also know? It's been a month and I feel no closer to breaking away from the heartbreak. I miss her. I want her to be alive. If she was, I would probably even want to fix our marriage, but she's not here anymore. I still couldn't bring myself to read all of her text messages with him. There is hundreds, and some are sexually explicit. My blood boils and my heart aches when I open their texts, and I get hit with anxiety and an adrenaline rush. Palms get sweaty and hands shake, but I feel it's important. I knew everything. It just breaks my heart. This guy did things with my wife she wouldn't do for me. The thing that blows my mind the most is that there were no warning signs at all. Not one. Our marriage was good. She never did anything suspicious. Our sex life went on as normal, just zero warning signs about it. Other than the fact she started wearing a little more makeup than usual. Then I blamed myself for not catching on. Maybe this all could have been prevented. Maybe I should have done this or that. I am broken and don't see myself ever being happy again. Edit. Thanks everyone for all the support. I honestly didn't expect so much response. Everyone who wished me well, thank you and know that your kind words give me strength. I have got a response back from her friend stating that she is deeply sorry for encouraging the behavior and not taking my feelings into account. She never wanted me hurt, as she claims. Honestly, I don't feel any relief from her apologies. About the phone, I cannot bring myself to destroy all the truth. I feel like I must read through the entirety of my wife's texts with this man, or I will forever go crazy wondering what did and didn't occur, how often, and maybe get some answers on if they were lovers. Was it just lust, sex, or what did she plan on doing? Obviously, in this state of trauma, I cannot emotionally handle reading their conversations, but I decided to keep the phone, to read it all, and then toss it and move on. Also, for people telling me to piss on her grave or saying this is karma, please drop it and don't comment. I loved her for over a decade, and it's not going away like that. I still love this woman, even with the disgusting things she has done. She was still my wife, a daughter, and an aunt. She didn't deserve to get hit by some drunk driver and suffer with bleeding on her brain that ultimately caused her death. Please go away. I do not need this, and I am not a sick-minded enough man to have those thoughts. For everyone else, thank you so much. Throwaway account, although I've lurked here for a month with my primary account and know a few of your stories. Short version, wife came to me in early December with love you, not in love with you, and wanted a separation. I said, I didn't, and let's work on it. She said, okay. Shit, I spent all Christmas season trying to woo her all over again. We have 2 little kids. I wanted to save our family. I love her and I loved him. At first, it was going well. She was totally into it. We made love constantly. She discovered a new kink. She liked it a little rough while being intimate. Okay, so I did that. She loved it. Holding hands, cuddling, you name it. She even began to say, I love you too. When I said, I love you, she's sending me sexy pictures of her in a bikini. We go on dates. We do family things and our kids love it. I start dieting and working out and drop 20 pounds in a month. I'm helping out around the house a ton. We do projects together. We start marriage counseling. She said, she's so relieved. We're working on things, but my gut one day just started screaming. Something is up. Her phone. It's always going off. She's always on it. She never lets it get too far and hides it from me. Some days she's totally distracted and cold. I noticed she has developed a nervous twitch in her hands. She's constantly grinding her teeth. This morning while she was sleeping, I grabbed her phone and finally snooped more than 1,000 messages. Some guy far away in a city on the other side of the country. We live in Canada. She had gone to that city for work back in October. They met there. He came to our city in November. The month my best friend and his family were killed in a head-on collision, and I was devastated. She had been vague and distant then. No wonder. You exploded with ecstasy when we were intimate, and it was rough and you enjoyed it, was one of his messages to her. Those sexy pictures. Yeah, she was sending them to him as well. He's separated with two little kids back in his hometown. I wake my wife up, hand her the phone. There are some messages for you. I tell her. Oh shit, the look on her face. She flips. I want a divorce, she says. I tell her I'm not leaving this home. She must go. I take the kids to school. She's gone when I get back. Left a note. She says she'll help me with finances until I'm on my feet. I'm just in my last term of college after going back, which she agreed to 2 years ago and would support us while I did so. I have a good paying job lined up in May, thanks to my college degree I'm about to get. I'm devastated right now. I'm a mess. Kids are home. My son is playing Minecraft and my daughter is happily splashing in a bubble bath. They're asking where mommy is. I tell them she took a little vacation. I know she's at her friend's house. Update. Thanks everyone for the supportive comments and great advice. It's the end of day one. I'm not going to say anything stupid like it's a new beginning or things like that. I'm in a daze. I feel so hurt. Anyways, I just wanted to add some updates as I keep getting the same advice. For starters, I absolutely am going to get tested for STDs. Second, I'm going to see a lawyer and soon. As a broke student who is now a single father, I qualify for legal aid, which means the government will pay for the lawyers. There's a process and some bureaucracy, but I'm getting on that tomorrow morning. My wayward wife is an immigrant to Canada from Europe, Ukraine to be exact. I taught English there a long time ago and met her there. We fell in love, dated for a couple of years, married, and then I brought her to my home here in Canada. She's since thrived here, got citizenship, which my brother paid for because it's ridiculously expensive, and a big cushy job with the federal government. She has nobody here. No family. Her social network is tenuous at best. Most of her friends are married couples with kids who don't have time to invest in a real friendship. The AP resides on the other side of the North American continent. He has kids of his own and is separated. I snooped his socials. He's not going to leave them to take a chance with some hussy he met once or twice for a fast lay. She's not going to be able to move there with the kids because she'll get arrested for kidnapping. She left the marital home and left the kids here. She had promised to support me while I went back to college full-time. She has broken that promise. She has nowhere to live, no one to help her, and she's about to get crushed in the divorce. I seriously underestimated the extent of mental illness. The affair fog is playing havoc with her. She is seriously in trouble. And as someone who was her husband for 12 years until today, my heart is breaking, not only for me, but for her. She's going to be in a world of hurt and doesn't even realize it yet. I hate